Absolutely not.
Hilda administers the driving test.
Hilda, that bitch, bureaucrat, she doesn't care. She doesn't care.
We can't waste the taxpayers' money.
Never seen Katerina so nervous, and Hilda was offering no small talk or other small courtesy to help put Katerina at ease. She was all business. She asked to see Katerina's learner's license and proof of insurance. Katerina's hands were trembling when she pulled them out of the glove box. Next, Hilda had Katerina sit in the driver's seat while she walked around the outside of the car. Then she asked Katerina to do various things such as engage the left turn signal, the right turn signal, step on the brake, and so forth as she walked around the outside of the car to see if the lights came on and the equipment worked properly. A step that seemed completely unnecessary for an obviously brand new car, but a procedure that was rattling an already nervous Katerina to the point where she engaged the left blinker when Hilda called for the right blinker. Katerina looked horrified when she realized her mistake, but Hilda used the opportunity to seem magnanimous.
Don't worry right now. I am just checking the equipment. It is okay and will not be counted against you.
With Katerina clearly on the defensive, Hilda was now ready to start the examination.
But now, please pay close attention because we are starting the test. Okay, now show me the speedometer, the fuel gauge. Now turn the headlights on. Okay, please demonstrate the hand signal for a right turn. Now show me how to engage the emergency flasher.
Katerina was terribly nervous and completely unprepared for this line of questioning. She didn't expect it and had never practiced or studied for it. And furthermore, a new car is a liability when it comes to explaining how to read gauges and explaining the instrument panel. They are complicated and many functions are computerized, a point which was not lost by Hilda as she pursued this line of questioning with added zeal when she noticed that Katerina was beginning to falter and become confused. In fact, Hilda was already asking,
"Where is the odometer?"
when she realized Katerina could not find and engage the emergency flasher. Hilda's magnanimous attitude had now faded as quickly as the summer breeze, and with a voice as cold as the winter wind, she said,
"I'm sorry, but I have to mark that down as your first mistake."
Now Katerina was really rattled because she realized Hilda was waiting to hear the answer to her previous question, namely,
"Where is the odometer?"
Not only was Katerina not sure where it was, she was not even sure what it was, and she didn't want to appear to be stupid. Katerina mumbled something unintelligible about the dashboard and where and what an odometer was. Then, looking furiously for an escape route, she said,
This is a brand new car. May I look at the owner's manual?
But Hilda was enjoying the crucifixion and replied,
"Whose car is it?"
Oh, it's mine.
Katerina had instinctively and quickly blurted it out with a small prideful smile before giving the consequences of her answer any thought. Then, realizing what Hilda would say next, she quickly amended her answer.
Well, it is registered in my husband's name.
A quick glance at Hilda's deadpan face and fixed glare, and Katerina realized it was no use. He changed course quickly and went on to say very humbly and honestly,
It was a gift to me from my husband, and I guess I haven't learned all of the instrument panel yet. I studied the traffic law booklet, and I went to driving school.
Hilda responded with a restrained smile to Katerina's honest and humble admission, but nevertheless informed her,
"I'm sorry, Katerina, but you are starting the driving part of the test with 2 mistakes against you."
Just when it seemed it couldn't get any worse, Katerina discovered she couldn't find her keys. While she was rummaging through her purse, Hilda said,
"Is that your keychain hanging from the ignition on the steering wheel?"
Katerina was greatly relieved that the keys had been located, but the fact that it was Hilda who found them offered no comfort to her already shattered nerves.
"We are ready to proceed. Start the car and back out of this parking spot, and then go north toward the exit of the parking lot."
Katerina turned the key and started the car, but she forgot to release the parking brake. Therefore, when she tried to back up, the engine died, which she did not notice. She did, however, realize that she needed to release the parking brake because the car wasn't moving. However, when she released the parking brake with the gear shift knob still in reverse and the engine still not running, the car started to slowly roll backwards as the parking spot was not level. Katerina, not realizing the engine was off, tried to apply a little gas to make the car move a little bit faster. Nothing happened, except that she was slowly rolling backwards and was now about 1/4 of the way out of the parking spot. Finally, Hilda advised her,
"The motor is not running."
With great embarrassment and completely frayed nerves, Katerina applied the foot brake to stop the car from continuing to roll, and turned the ignition key to restart the motor. Nothing happened, and Katerina could not get the car to start. Hilda let Katerina suffer 3 more times, trying unsuccessfully to start the engine. Then the twinkle once again appeared in Hilda's eyes, and she mercifully said,
"It will not start until you replace the gear shift knob to the park position."
Finally, Katerina got the car correctly started and was ready to back the rest of the way out of the parking spot. As she tried to gather her composure, an almost impossible task under the circumstances, she began turning the steering wheel a bit too soon before she fully was clear of the curb, and clipped the curb with one of the front tires. Hilda quickly put a check mark next to the fatal error section of the scoring sheet, and without further ado, said,
"The test is over. You failed. Go ahead and pull forward into the parking spot."
Attempting to salvage whatever benefit she could, Katerina very politely and humbly asked,
Hilda, may I complete the whole of the driving test just as if I had not failed, as a learning experience?
"I am sorry, Katerina. The answer is no. There are driving schools for that sort of thing. We can't waste the taxpayers' money teaching people to drive. Absolutely not."
Katerina was almost in tears, and I deeply sympathized with what she had just been through. She was worried if she would ever be able to pass the driving test. She had just suffered a most humiliating and utterly complete defeat at what was advertised to be the easiest DMV testing center. Once we were back in the car and safely out of ear range of the DMV office, she vacillated wildly between self-doubt that she could ever pass the test and strong resentment.
Hilda, that rich bitch bureaucrat who didn't even have the time or the decency to let me finish the test after I begged her. I even told her I fully understand I have failed, and the failure is irreversible.
But in the coming weeks, Katerina's resolve to obtain her driver's license was easily buoyed when I told her almost everybody fails the behind-the-wheel driving test on their first try. Don't even waste a minute thinking about it. Forget it. Just think of it as if you were doing a little reconnaissance to find out what it is like to take the test. It was a big success. You got a lot of valuable information. I myself didn't even know that checking the turn signal lights or the emergency flasher lights were a part of the examination. And the instrument panel quiz was another very valuable lesson that we learned. And it was probably a good thing you went to the Hemet DMV office to take the test, because now you still have an unblemished record at the Glendale DMV. Also, you will now be prepared for the questions they're going to ask. As it turned out, Katerina went back to Safety First driving school for a 3rd time. This time, Oscar spent almost all her 12 hours doing practice runs on the exact same route employed by the driving examiners from the Glendale DMV office. Katerina was resilient, intelligent, and not even considering giving up. However, her new Sebring convertible was already beginning to get a little banged up, not from accidents with other cars, but the wheels were getting fairly well banged up from hitting curbs, the door panels and sides had minor scratching from driving too close to tree limbs and sharp bushes, and the front and rear bumpers had encountered their fair share of parking encumbrances. Add to that the piles of clutter that Katerina accumulated and kept in the car. Then, in what I considered a finishing touch, Katerina took about $10 worth of sticker stamps that came with an Audubon Society children's learning booklet featuring common garden variety insects and spiders, and permanently adhered them to the inside front windshield. I couldn't figure that one out. And when I asked her, she said,
I'm going to use them for parallel parking. I came up with this idea when I was practicing parking with Oscar. If I line up my field of vision using those stamps as markers, it works perfectly every time.
And thus, out of the ashes of a humiliating defeat that could have made a weaker person abandon her quest, Katerina's confidence was rising. You had to understand Katerina's childhood to appreciate the ease with which she could shrug off such a humiliating defeat at the hands of the state of California DMV driving examiner. Katerina was raised until age 13 under the old, tired, and oppressive Soviet Union, where life was awkwardly dominated by inefficient government bureaucrats. These were officials who had little or no incentive to do a good job. Life in the Soviet system in those days consisted of a constant struggle to get around these bureaucrats, who were basically just obstacles to the chores of daily living, and the bureaucrats who controlled the few privileges which were available under that system, such as the granting of the issuance of a driver's license, all too often used their position to exchange the privilege they controlled with another bureaucrat who was in a position to return the favor with some valuable commodity he controlled. When the Soviet Union broke apart and Russia became a sovereign state, the old-style bureaucrats began to be pushed aside by the new Russians, the young capitalists who seized on the turmoil of change, using every legal and illegal means at their disposal to accumulate power and wealth. As a young teenager during this violent social upheaval, where the old was being supplanted by the new, it didn't take a crystal ball to figure out which one Katerina and her friends admired and looked up to, and which one she pitied and despised. Which brings us to Katerina's third law.
A government bureaucrat is an obstacle which needs to be overcome or gotten around. Do not stir up a hornet's nest by making them mad. Better to pay them off and make them happy. They're not very clever, but they can make life miserable. There's a strategy for each and every one of them. You just have to find it.
And of course, its corollaries.
Think like a new Russian and you will succeed. And laws are tools to be used to get what you want. Employ them and ignore them carefully to your full advantage.
In other words,
Hilda was just a nuisance encountered on the trail of life. In this case, she was a bureaucrat to be both pitied, despised, and quickly forgotten.
To continue the story, please insert disc number 2 and find out what happens next in The Russian Bride.